They did not shout. They did not argue. They smiled. "We've already taken care of the paperwork," my sister Avery said, her voice light, confident, as if she were explaining a dinner reservation instead of ending my place in the house. "The house is under my name now. You should be out by Friday." That was the moment I understood how easy it was for them to decide I no longer belonged. The story in the video is a creative work by Revenge Pulse. All characters and events are fictional, crafted to convey a humanistic message and the values of family. My parents stood behind her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. My mother, Diane, folded her hands like she was bracing for gratitude. My father, Michael, nodded once, as if to confirm that this was reasonable, final, and not open for discussion. "It just makes sense." He said, "Avery has the time. You're always busy in the city." Avery glanced around at the living room, already claiming space with her eyes. "We didn't want this to be awkward," she added. "So we handled it for you." I looked at the papers in her hand. Crisp, official-looking, too neat. The kind of documents people trust because they want to believe effort equals legitimacy. "You didn't talk to me," I said. My mother sighed softly, the sound she used when she wanted to appear patient. "Noelle, we knew you'd overthink it. This way, there's no stress. For you," I said. Avery smiled tighter. "You're being dramatic. It's not like you're losing anything important." The room went quiet after that. Not uncomfortable. Decided. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger. Not fear. Clarity. "Okay," I said. The relief on their faces was immediate. My father's shoulders relaxed. My mother reached for her purse. Avery exhaled like she had just won something she never doubted she deserved. "That's good," my mother said. "I knew you'd understand." Avery stepped past me, close enough that I caught her perfume. "We'll come back soon," she said. "Probably with movers." "It's easier if we do everything at once." I nodded. I even smiled. As they left, Avery called back. "If you're listening to this story and you've ever been told to quietly step aside for the sake of family, stay with me. You're not imagining what comes next." The door closed behind them. They thought the ending had already been written. They did not know what I had done 10 business days after my graduation. I didn't pack that night. I didn't call anyone. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the quiet they thought they had created. My phone buzzed once. A message from my mother. "Thank you for being mature about this." I stared at the word mature. In our family, it was what they called me when I absorbed impact without complaint. The next morning, my father called. His voice was lighter than it had been the day before. "We'll give you a few days," he said. "No rush. We want this to be smooth." "Of course," I replied. "You can leave the keys on the counter," he added, already speaking like the house had shifted away from me. "Avery will take care of the rest." I said nothing. At work, I went through meetings, answered emails, smiled when required. No one noticed anything different. That was the part I had practiced my whole life. Avery texted in the afternoon. "Don't stress. I'll handle the utilities and insurance once everything's settled." Once everything's settled, she spoke as if the ground had already stopped moving. That evening, I stopped by a grocery store near my apartment. I bought coffee I did not need and bread I would not finish. Small habits, familiar ones. Control where I could find it. Later, another message came in, this time from my aunt. "Your sister says you're taking this well. I'm glad. Family should come first." I did not respond. They all assumed the same thing. That silence meant hesitation. That calm meant uncertainty. That because I had always stepped back before. I would do it again. They did not know that 10 business days after my graduation, I had walked into a quiet office in Seattle and told a stranger everything, not with anger, not with accusations, just facts, laid out carefully, the way you do when you are done asking for permission. They thought I was waiting to be told what would happen next. I wasn't waiting. I was letting them move exactly where they believed they belonged. In our family, Avery was described as driven. I was described as easy. She knows what she wants. My mother used to say about Avery, pride softening her voice. When she talked about me, the tone changed. Noelle's independent. She doesn't need much. That sentence followed me for years. It sounded like praise until I understood what it allowed them to ignore. When Avery wanted something, there were conversations, plans, adjustments. My father would lean back in his chair and say, "We'll make it work." My mother would add, "She has potential. We don't want to hold her back." When I wanted something, the answer came faster. "You'll figure it out," my father would say. "It'll build character." My mother added, "Avery never had to learn how to swallow disappointment quietly." I did. At family dinners, Avery talked and everyone listened. When I spoke, my words often drifted into the space between conversations and disappeared. If I stopped talking mid-sentence, no one noticed. Once, when I was younger, my grandmother pulled me aside in the kitchen and said, "You don't have to be invisible to be loved." She said it gently, like she already knew I wouldn't argue. At home, though, the rules were different. Being agreeable kept things calm. Being quiet kept the peace. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," my mother said whenever I hesitated. "Why are you so sensitive?" Avery asked once. Laughing, when I didn't react the way she expected, I learned early that reacting only made things worse. By the time I was old enough to understand the pattern, it had already shaped me. I became the one who adjusted, who waited, who nodded, the one they trusted to handle things without asking for help, and blamed when things went wrong. So when Avery stood in the living room and told me the house was hers now, the part of me they had trained responded first. The part that knew resistance would be labeled selfish. The part that understood how quickly stories could be rewritten. They believed that history was on their side. They believed I would shrink the way I always had. They never noticed the moment I stopped. The house was never introduced to me as an inheritance. It was introduced as responsibility. "Can you stop by the pharmacy for us?" my grandmother asked one afternoon. Her voice careful, as if she was afraid of asking too much. "Of course," I said. And I meant it. At first it was errands, then appointments. Then sitting beside my grandfather while he paid bills, handing them to me one by one. "Just double-check the amounts," he said. "You're good with details." When the checks became harder for him to write, he slid the folder across the table. "You take over," he told me. Not as a favor, as trust. My parents visited too, mostly on holidays, mostly with questions. "Everything okay here?" my father asked once, already scanning the room. "It's fine," I said. My grandmother smiled at me when he wasn't looking. "You're the steady one," she said quietly. The house sat above the water in Port Townsend, close enough to hear the tide at night. It was valued at roughly $1.8 million by the time my grandparents passed, though no one ever said the number out loud around them. To them, it was never an asset. It was where things stayed. After they were gone, the calls started. "You know the property taxes alone are over $22,000 a year," my mother said one evening, stirring her tea. "That's a lot for one person. I'm handling it." I replied. My father followed a week later. "Maintenance adds up. Roofs, plumbing, insurance. I've got it," I said again. Avery stopped by unexpectedly one afternoon, leaning against the counter like she belonged there. "You still paying everything yourself?" she asked. "Utilities, insurance, that kind of thing." "Yes." She smiled. "Just checking." They spoke as if concern gave them access, as if showing up late still counted as showing up. What they never said was that I had been there when the work was quiet, when nothing was being measured, when no one was watching. The house didn't feel like something I owned. It felt like something I had been trusted with. And trust. I had learned was the first thing they believed they could take. The questions started arriving dressed as care. My mother called one evening and didn't bother with small talk. "Have you thought about how long you can realistically manage the house alone I have?" I said. She paused, waiting for more. When nothing came, she continued, "It's a lot of pressure. Noelle, we just don't want you overwhelmed." I'm not. A few days later, my father followed up, his voice calm in the way he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. "You know, upkeep isn't just occasional repairs. Things add up. I'm aware," I said. He cleared his throat. "We're only trying to help you think long term." Help, in our family, was another word for direction. Avery stopped by without warning the next weekend. She didn't knock. She never did. She set her bag down and looked around, slow and deliberate. "This place still smells the same," she said, smiling, comforting. I didn't respond. She leaned against the counter. "You're still handling everything yourself, right? Insurance, utilities, all that paperwork?" "Yes." "Good," she said. "That stuff can get messy if it's not centralized." "Centralized where I asked?" She laughed lightly. "I just mean organized." Later that night, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from my aunt. "Your sister says she's worried about you. She thinks you're carrying too much alone." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down. At dinner the following week, my mother reached across the table and touched my hand. "Your grandparents would have wanted things to be fair," she said softly. My father nodded. "Shared responsibility keeps families close." Avery smiled at me from across the table. "We're all on the same side." I withdrew my hand gently. "I've got things covered." The air shifted after that, not sharply, subtly, like a door closing somewhere down the hall. They weren't asking anymore. They were measuring, and for the first time, I understood that their concern had an expiration date. The memory came back to me late one night, uninvited and sharp. Years ago, my parents had borrowed money from a distant cousin. It was described as urgent, temporary, necessary. I remembered my mother's voice then, calm and reassuring. "We'll pay her back as soon as things settle." They never did. Months later, when the cousin asked about it, the tone shifted. "She's being aggressive," my father said at dinner, shaking his head. "It's not like we're refusing. She knows we've had a lot going on." My mother sighed. "Some people care more about money than family." Avery laughed. "That's just embarrassing for her." The story changed quickly after that. The cousin stopped calling. Then she stopped being invited. Eventually, she became the example my parents used whenever they talked about greed. I sat there that night, staring at my phone, replaying the recent conversations in my head, the concern, the timing, the way my silence was being reported back to me through other people. "Your sister says she's worried. Your parents just want fairness." The words rearranged themselves into something familiar. Take first, delay, rewrite. The next morning, my mother called again. "We've been talking," she said carefully. "This doesn't have to get complicated." "It isn't complicated," I replied. She paused. "We just don't want resentment later." "I don't either." There was a tightness in her voice when she answered. "Then you'll understand why we need to make sure things are handled properly." I hung up after that. The realization didn't arrive with anger. It arrived with clarity. This wasn't about the house. It was about control, disguised as concern. It was about deciding the outcome and calling it unity. For the first time, I didn't try to explain myself. I didn't rehearse arguments or prepare compromises. I recognized the pattern. And I understood that if I waited for it to end on its own, it never would. The office was quiet in a way that felt intentional. No music, no interruptions. Just a man across the desk who listened without rushing me. His name was Daniel, an estate attorney based in Seattle. I hadn't chosen him because he looked intimidating. I chose him because he didn't interrupt when I spoke. "They think the house is already theirs," I said. They're acting like time is on their side. Daniel folded his hands. Then they're likely to move quickly. I don't want to fight, I said. He nodded once. Most people don't, but wanting peace doesn't stop conflict when entitlement is involved. He explained my options carefully. Trusts, titles, what could be contested, what could not. If your concern is long-term protection, he said, an irrevocable trust removes the asset from personal interpretation. Once it's done, it cannot be undone because someone feels wronged. The word irrevocable settled heavily in my chest. I would be the trustee, I said. Yes, he replied, sole trustee. Decisions stay with you. I thought of my mother's voice. We just want what's best. I thought of my father's calm certainty. It just makes sense. I thought of Avery's smile when she said the house was already hers. How long does it take? I asked. Usually a few weeks. Daniel said, there's verification, filing, waiting. What can go wrong? He met my eyes. Delays, errors, family pressure. I signed the initial paperwork with a steadier hand than I expected. The weeks that followed were quiet and tense. I checked my voicemail every morning. I reread emails late at night, afraid I'd missed a detail. When Daniel called to confirm a filing delay, my stomach tightened. It's procedural, he said. Annoying, but normal. During that time, my family grew warmer. My mother invited me to dinner twice in 1 week. My father asked about my job. Avery joked about repainting the guest room someday. I smiled. I listened. I documented. One night. Alone. The doubt surfaced. If they find out, they'll call me selfish. The thought didn't stop me. When Daniel called again and said, it's complete, I didn't celebrate. I exhaled. From this point forward, he added, the property is protected. I thanked him and hung up. Nothing about me changed on the outside, but something fundamental shifted for the first time. I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. The shift came quietly. My mother called one afternoon with a softness she usually reserved for holidays. We've been thinking about family traditions, she said. It might be nice to bring everyone together again. That sounds nice, I replied. My father followed a day later. We don't want tension, he said. Things work best when everyone feels included. I agree, I said. Avery became almost cheerful. She sent me photos of paint colors she liked. Just ideas. She texted, for the future. I responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Behind the warmth, the pressure tightened. A cousin asked why I was being protective. An aunt suggested I was holding on to something out of fear. Each message arrived carrying someone else's voice. Then Avery texted, short and certain. We'll stop by Thursday. Easier to explain in person. They arrived exactly when they said they would. Avery held a slim folder, smiling like she was delivering good news. We used an online filing service, she said, setting the papers on the table. Everything's official now. My parents stood behind her, calm and confident. This way, there's no confusion, my father said. The house is clearly Avery's. My mother added, we thought you'd be relieved. I flipped through the pages without reading them. It's done, Avery said. You don't need to worry about details anymore. I closed the folder and slid it back to her. Okay, I said. The reaction was immediate. Avery's smile widened. My mother reached for her purse. My father nodded, satisfied. We'll come back soon, Avery said, probably with movers. It's easier if we handle everything at once. That makes sense. I replied. They left believing they had crossed the finish line. I stood in the quiet after the door closed and noted the date. 2 days. They thought my silence meant surrender. They didn't realize it was permission. And permission, given too freely, has a way of ending exactly where it begins. They arrived early, A white moving truck idled behind my parents' car, loud enough to announce confidence. Avery stepped out first, energized, already gesturing toward the porch. "This will be quick," she said. "We'll have you out before lunch." I opened the door and stepped outside. I wasn't alone. Daniel stood beside me, calm, carrying a thick folder marked with court stamps. He didn't introduce himself right away. He didn't need to. One of the movers slowed. "Everything good?" "Not yet," Daniel said evenly. My father frowned. "Who's this?" Daniel turned slightly. "I'm the estate attorney representing the irrevocable trust that holds this property." Avery laughed once, sharp and uncertain. "That's not possible. We filed everything." Daniel opened the folder just enough for them to see. The trust was completed 4 weeks ago. Miss Noelle Grant is the sole trustee. Any attempt to transfer ownership without her authorization is void. My mother stepped forward. "There must be a mistake." "There isn't," Daniel replied. "The documents you submitted came through an unverified service. The notary information does not match state records." The movers exchanged looks. "So," one of them said quietly, "do you want us to wait?" "No," Daniel said. "You should not proceed." Avery turned to me, her voice unsteady. "You planned this. I protected it," I said. "You decided without asking." My father's jaw tightened. "After everything we've done for you," Daniel handed him a notice. "This documents today's attempted possession and serves as a formal warning. Further action could escalate into a legal matter." The confidence drained out of them slowly. Not with shouting, not with threats, with silence. Avery folded the papers in her hand until the edges bent. "This isn't over," she said, weaker than she meant to. "That part is up to you," I replied. They left without another word. The moving truck followed, gravel settling back into place like nothing had happened. A week later, a letter arrived from their attorney, all claims withdrawn, no further contact requested. I filed it away and didn't reread it. The house felt different after that, not triumphant, secure. I made tea and sat where my grandparents used to sit. For the first time, I wasn't listening for footsteps or bracing for a knock. If you're listening to this and you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace while someone else decided your future, stay with the story. Share it if it sounds familiar. Sometimes the line you're afraid to draw is the one that finally lets you breathe. I didn't take anything from them. I stopped letting them take from me, and the house stayed silent.